tears were already rolling down her cheeks as she reached for the door handle. "Please, I only want to go and see my mother," she cried softly, her voice breaking. Before she could open it, her husband behind her spoke calmly, but with a squeezed, angry face. "I married you, Grace." She froze. Chief Matthew did not raise his voice. His jaw was tight. His eyes were hard. "I married you, so you belong here." Her fingers slipped off the handle as fresh tears rushed down her face. She knocked on the door, shaking. Then louder. "Please, someone help me. Please, Samuel, Samuel, please, open the door." The security guard outside, Samuel, looked through the glass and turned away. Her chest tightened. She covered her mouth to hide her sob. But how did a poor village woman, who only wanted a better life, end up trapped inside her own marriage? Was the money worth the tears, the silence, and the loss of her freedom? Sit back as we dive into this shocking story. 6 months earlier, Grace knelt beside the market stall, arranging her small pile of tomatoes on a faded plastic tray. Sweat dripped down her back. Her wrapper was old and torn at the edges. Her slippers had holes in them. But none of that mattered. What mattered was selling enough tomatoes today to buy Gary and a few tablets of paracetamol for her mother. Mama Blessing had been coughing for 3 months now. The cough had started small, but now it shook her whole body. Sometimes blood came out. The local chemist said it was tuberculosis. He said she needed to go to the hospital in the city. He said she needed proper drugs. But Grace had no money for any of that. Her father, Papa Blessing, had died 3 years ago in a motorcycle accident on the express road. He left behind nothing but debts and 5 hungry mouths to feed. Grace, the eldest at 23, became the backbone of the family overnight. Her younger sister, Patience, was only 15. Too young to work, too young to carry the weight Grace carried every day. Her twin brothers, Daniel and David, were 12 years old. They tried to help by fetching firewood and running errands for neighbours, but it was never enough. And her youngest brother, Michael, was only 8. He had stopped going to school because there was no money for fees. Grace was their only hope. Every morning she woke up at 5. She fetched water from the village well. She cooked a small pot of watery yam porridge for the family. Then she walked 3 kilometres to the market under the hot sun, carrying a basin of tomatoes on her head. Some days she sold everything. Most days she did not. Today was one of those days. By 4 o'clock in the evening, she had only sold half of her tomatoes. The rest were already going soft in the heat. She would have to throw them away. Grace sat on the ground and put her head in her hands. She was tired. So tired. Grace! She looked up. It was her neighbour, Mama Joy, rushing toward her with her wrapper flying behind her. "Grace, your mother." She collapsed again. Grace's heart dropped into her stomach. She did not wait. She left everything, the tomatoes, the tray, the small money she had made, and ran. She ran through the dusty market road, past the mechanic workshop, past the borehole, past the church, until she reached their small wooden house at the edge of the village. Inside, Mama Blessing was lying on a thin mat, unconscious. Patience was crying beside her. Daniel and David stood in the corner, looking terrified. Little Michael was shaking. "Mama, Mama, wake up!" Grace knelt beside her mother and shook her gently. Mama Blessing's eyes fluttered open slowly. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her breathing was shallow. Grace, my daughter, she whispered weakly. Mama, I'm here. Please don't talk. Save your strength. But Mama Blessing shook her head slowly. My daughter, I don't have much time left. No, don't say that, Mama. Don't say that. I will find money. I will take you to the hospital. I promise. But even as Grace said the words, she knew they were empty. She had no money, no savings, no help. That night, Grace sat outside under the stars and cried until there were no more tears left. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Grace was at the market again, trying to sell her tomatoes, when a sleek black SUV pulled up beside the roadside, the kind of car that did not belong in Ugwoba village. People stopped and stared. A man stepped out. He was tall and well-dressed. His shoes were shiny. His wristwatch glittered in the sunlight. His stomach pushed against his shirt, the kind of stomach that came from eating 3 full meals every day. This was Chief Matthew. Everyone in the village knew who he was. He owned a big transportation company in the city. He had houses in Enugu, Abuja, and even one in Lagos. He was rich, powerful, respected. And he was standing in front of Grace's tomato stall. Good afternoon, my daughter, he said with a wide smile. Grace quickly stood up and greeted him respectfully. Good afternoon, sir. What is your name? Grace, sir. Grace, he repeated, nodding slowly. A beautiful name for a beautiful girl. Grace looked down, uncomfortable. She did not know what to say. Chief Matthew walked around her stall, looking at the tomatoes but not really seeing them. Then he stopped and looked at her again. I have been watching you, he said. Grace's stomach twisted. You are a hard-working girl. I can see that. You carry yourself with respect. You are not like these other girls who are running after men and money. Grace kept her eyes on the ground. I want to help you, Chief Matthew continued. I heard about your mother. I heard she is very sick. Grace's head shot up. Sir? Yes, I know everything that happens in this village. I know you are struggling. I know you are trying to take care of your family alone. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Chief Matthew stepped closer. I want to marry you, Grace. Her breath stopped. I am a man of means. I can take care of you. I can take care of your mother. I can send your brothers and sister to school. I can give your family a better life. Grace's mind was spinning. Marriage? To Chief Matthew? But he was almost 50 years old. She was only 23, and she had heard stories about him. Whispers in the village. People said his first wife had left him. People said he was a difficult man. People said, but then Grace thought about her mother coughing blood. She thought about Patience, who had stopped smiling. She thought about Daniel and David, who were always hungry. She thought about little Michael, who cried every night because he missed school. Grace's voice shook. I need to think about it, sir. Chief Matthew smiled, but it was not a warm smile. Don't think too long, my daughter. Your mother does not have much time. He got back into his SUV and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. That night, Grace could not sleep. She lay on the thin mat beside Patience, staring at the ceiling. The wooden roof had gaps where she could see stars through the cracks. Marriage to Chief Matthew. The thought made her stomach turn. She did not love him. She did not even know him. And the way he looked at her, it made her skin crawl. But what choice did she have? If she said no, her mother would die. If she said no, her siblings would continue to suffer. If she said no, they would remain trapped in this cycle of poverty forever. In the corner of the room, Mama Blessing coughed weakly. The sound tore through Grace's heart. The next morning, Grace made her decision. She washed her face with cold water from the bucket. She tied her best wrapper around her waist. She borrowed a clean blouse from Mama Joy. Then she walked to Chief Matthew's compound in the centre of the village. The gateman let her in immediately. It was as if they had been expecting her. Chief Matthew was sitting under a mango tree in his compound, drinking from a bottle of beer. When he saw Grace, his face broke into a wide smile. "Ah, Grace, you have come. I knew you would come." Grace stood before him, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Sir, I have thought about your proposal, and..." She took a deep breath. "I will marry you, sir." Chief Matthew stood up immediately. His smile grew even wider. "You have made the right decision, my daughter. You will not regret this. I will take care of everything." He clapped his hands loudly, and a houseboy appeared from inside the house. "Bring me my checkbook." Within minutes, Chief Matthew had written out a check. He handed it to Grace. "This is for your mother's hospital bills. Take her to the best hospital in Enugu. Tell them Chief Matthew sent you. They will take care of her." Grace stared at the check in her hands. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," Chief Matthew said, his voice suddenly firm. "We will do the traditional marriage next week, and the white wedding the week after. I don't like to waste time." Grace's heart pounded. Next week? That was so soon. But she nodded. "Yes, sir." As she walked back home with the check in her hand, Grace felt a strange mix of relief and dread. She had saved her mother. But what had she done to herself? 1 week later, Grace's family compound was filled with people. Chief Matthew had paid for everything. The canopies, the chairs, the food, the drinks, the musicians. Everything. The village women came early in the morning to help Grace get ready. They braided her hair with black thread. They rubbed shea butter on her skin until it glowed. They wrapped her in a beautiful coral-coloured wrapper and blouse that Chief Matthew had bought for her. When Grace looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror, she almost did not recognize the person staring back. She looked beautiful, but her eyes looked sad. "Smile, my daughter," Mama Joy whispered to her. "This is your wedding day. You should be happy." But Grace could not smile. Her mother, Mama Blessing, had been admitted to the hospital in Enugu 3 days ago. The doctors said she was responding well to treatment. They said she would survive. Grace should have been happy about that. And she was. But she could not shake the feeling that she had sold herself. The traditional marriage ceremony began at noon. Chief Matthew arrived with his family and friends in a convoy of expensive cars. Music played loudly from big speakers. People danced and sprayed money. Grace sat quietly on a wooden stool in the centre of the compound, surrounded by her aunties and cousins. Her head was bowed. Her hands were folded in her lap. The master of ceremony called out Chief Matthew's name. He stepped forward, smiling proudly, his stomach leading the way. The elders of Grace's family asked him the traditional questions. "Do you promise to take care of this daughter of our land?" "Yes," Chief Matthew answered confidently. "Do you promise to treat her with respect and honor?" "Yes." "Do you promise to provide for her and protect her?" "Yes." 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 The crowd cheered. Then it was time for Grace to come forward. Her aunties helped her stand. They walked her slowly toward Chief Matthew. She was supposed to kneel before him and present him with a cup of palm wine. As Grace knelt down, she felt Chief Matthew's hand rest heavily on her shoulder. "You are mine now," he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. A shiver ran down her spine. She handed him the cup. He drank. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Music played. People danced. Naira notes flew through the air. But Grace felt nothing. She felt empty. The white wedding was even bigger. Chief Matthew had rented the biggest event center in Enugu. He invited over 500 guests. Politicians came, businessmen came, pastors came. Grace wore a white wedding gown that cost more than her family had earned in 10 years. It was beautiful, heavy, embroidered with pearls and lace, but it felt like a cage. The church service was long. The pastor preached about submission, about a wife obeying her husband, about being a virtuous woman. Grace stood at the altar beside Chief Matthew, holding a bouquet of white roses, and wondered if she would ever feel like herself again. When the pastor asked, "Do you, Grace, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" she hesitated, just for a second. Chief Matthew's hand tightened around hers. "I do," she whispered. The church erupted in applause. Chief Matthew kissed her. His lips were rough and dry. Grace closed her eyes and tried not to cry. After the wedding reception, Chief Matthew drove Grace to his house in the city. As they passed through the tall iron gates, Grace's breath caught in her throat. The house was massive. It was painted cream and white with tall pillars and a fountain in the front yard. There were flowers everywhere. The gate was electric. The driveway was paved with interlocking stones. It was the kind of house Grace had only seen in movies. "This is your new home," Chief Matthew said proudly. Grace nodded silently. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, and a young woman in a blue uniform came out to greet them. "Good evening, sir. Good evening, madam," she said, bowing slightly. "This is Muna," Chief Matthew said. "She is the housemaid. She will help you with anything you need." Muna smiled at Grace, but there was something sad in her eyes. Chief Matthew led Grace inside. The interior of the house was even more beautiful than the outside. The floors were shiny marble. There were leather couches in the sitting room. A flat-screen television on the wall. Air conditioning made the whole house cool. Grace had never experienced such luxury. "Come," Chief Matthew said. "Let me show you our bedroom." He led her up a curved staircase to the second floor. The bedroom was huge. It had a king-sized bed with silk sheets, a large mirror, a walk-in closet, an ensuite bathroom with a bathtub. "This is where you will sleep from now on," Chief Matthew said. Grace nodded. "Are you not happy?" he asked suddenly. Grace looked at him. "I am, sir." "Don't call me sir. I am your husband now. Call me Matthew." "Yes, Matthew," he smiled. Good. Now, go and freshen up. Muna will bring your dinner to you. He left the room and closed the door behind him. Grace sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. This was her new life. Beautiful, comfortable, and completely suffocating. The first few days in the house were quiet. Chief Matthew left early in the morning for his office and came back late at night. Grace spent most of her time alone, wandering through the big empty rooms. Muna was polite but distant. She cooked, she cleaned, she did not talk much. There was also Samuel, the gateman. He was a quiet man who sat in his small booth by the gate all day. And there was a driver, Peter, who took Chief Matthew to work every morning. Grace felt like a guest in the house, or worse, like a prisoner. On the third day, Grace woke up early and decided to go to the kitchen to make breakfast for herself. But when she got downstairs, Muna was already there, cooking. "Good morning, madam," Muna greeted. "Good morning. Please, you don't have to call me madam. Just call me Grace." Muna smiled nervously. "Olga will not like that." "Olga?" "Chief Matthew. He said, we must call you madam." Grace frowned, but did not argue. She sat at the kitchen table and watched Muna cook. "Can I help you?" Grace asked. Muna looked shocked. "No, madam, you are not supposed to cook. Olga said so, but I want to." "Please, madam, I will get in trouble." Grace sighed and went back upstairs. Later that afternoon, she tried to go outside to the garden, but as soon as she stepped onto the veranda, Samuel appeared from the gate. "Madam, where are you going?" "I just want to walk around the compound." Samuel hesitated. "Olga said you should not go outside without telling him first." Grace stared at him. "I'm not leaving the compound. I just want fresh air." "I'm sorry, madam. Those are Olga's instructions." Grace's chest tightened. She went back inside. That evening, when Chief Matthew came home, Grace decided to speak to him. "Matthew," she began carefully, "I wanted to ask, can I go outside sometimes, just to the compound?" Chief Matthew looked up from his plate of food. "Why do you want to go outside?" I feel trapped inside the house all day." His face hardened. "Trapped? You live in one of the biggest houses in Enugu and you feel trapped?" "I didn't mean it like that. Grace." His voice was calm, too calm. "You are my wife now. Your job is to stay in this house and take care of it. You don't need to be wandering around outside like a house girl." Grace swallowed her words. He continued eating as if nothing had happened. That night, Grace lay in bed beside him and realized something terrifying. She was not a wife. She was a possession. A week passed, then 2 weeks. Grace had not spoken to her family since the wedding. She missed them terribly. She wondered how Mama Blessing was doing in the hospital. She wondered if Patience was coping. She wondered if Daniel and David were eating properly. She wondered if little Michael was happy. One afternoon, she gathered the courage to ask Chief Matthew if she could call them. "No," he said simply. "Why not?" "Because you will become distracted. You are starting a new life now, Grace. You need to focus on being a good wife, not running back to your old life." "But they're my family." "I am your family now." Grace felt her throat close up. "Can I at least visit them? Just for one day?" Chief Matthew looked at her for a long time. "Not yet," he said finally. Maybe in a few months, when you have settled in properly. A few months? Grace's voice cracked. Yes. Is that a problem? Grace shook her head quickly. No, no problem. But inside, her heart was breaking. 3 weeks into the marriage, Grace was sitting in the bedroom when Muna knocked on the door. Madam, your sister is on the phone. Grace's heart leapt. Patience? Yes, madam. She called the gateman's number and asked to speak to you. Grace rushed downstairs and took the phone from Samuel. Patience? Patience, is that you? Sister Grace? Patience's voice was shaking. Sister, please, Mama has collapsed again. Grace's blood went cold. What? But the doctors said she was getting better. I know. But yesterday she started coughing blood again. The doctors say she needs more tests. They say she needs more money. How much? Patience named the amount. It was a lot. Sister, what should we do? We don't have any money left. Grace's mind raced. I'll talk to my husband. I'll ask him for the money. Don't worry, Patience. Everything will be fine. But even as she said it, she was not sure. When Chief Matthew came home that evening, Grace approached him carefully. Matthew, I need to ask you something. He looked up from his phone. My mother. She has collapsed again. She needs more treatment. The hospital is asking for more money. Chief Matthew frowned. How much? Grace told him. He laughed, not a happy laugh, a cold, mocking laugh. Grace, I have already spent so much money on your family. The hospital bills, the wedding, everything. How much more do you want from me? I know, and I'm grateful. But my mother's life, your mother's life, is not my responsibility, Grace. I married you, not your whole family. Grace felt like she had been slapped. Please, she whispered, please, I'm begging you, just this one time. Chief Matthew stood up and walked toward her. He placed his hand on her cheek, but there was no warmth in it. You want something from me, Grace? She nodded. Then you need to give me something in return. Grace's stomach turned. She knew what he meant. That night, after everything, Chief Matthew transferred the money for her mother's treatment. But Grace felt like she had lost a part of herself. 2 days later, Patience called again. Sister Grace, Mama is asking for you. She wants to see you. Grace's heart ached. Tell her I will come soon. When, sister? She is very weak. Soon, Patience, I promise. But Grace did not know if that was true. That evening, she asked Chief Matthew again. Please, can I go and see my mother? Just for a few hours. She is asking for me. No. Why not? Because I said so. But she's dying. Chief Matthew turned to face her, his eyes cold. If she dies, Grace. That is life. But you are not leaving this house. Grace stared at him in shock. You can't mean that. I mean exactly what I said. What kind of man are you? Chief Matthew stepped closer. His voice was low and dangerous. I am the man who saved you and your family from poverty. I am the man who gave you this life. And if you ever speak to me like that again, I will make sure you regret it. Grace took a step back, her hands shaking. Chief Matthew left the room. Grace sank to the floor and sobbed. As the days passed, Grace noticed something. Muna was watching her, not in a bad way, in a sad way. Sometimes, when Chief Matthew was not home, Moona would bring Grace tea without being asked. She would sit with her in the kitchen for a few minutes. She would ask, "Are you okay, madam?" And Grace would lie. "I'm fine." But Moona knew. One afternoon, Grace was crying in the bedroom when Moona knocked softly. "Madam, I brought you some water." Grace wiped her face quickly. "Thank you, Moona." Moona set the tray down and hesitated. "Madam, can I say something?" Grace looked up. "Yes, you are not the first." Grace's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" Moona looked toward the door nervously, then back at Grace. Ogre's first wife. She also tried to leave, many times. What happened to her? Moona's eyes filled with tears. She finally ran away one night, but Ogre found her. He brought her back. After that, she became like a ghost. She stopped talking, stopped smiling. One day, she just disappeared. Disappeared? Ogre said she went back to her family, but nobody ever saw her again. Grace's blood turned cold. "Why are you telling me this?" Moona looked at her with sad, knowing eyes. "Because I don't want the same thing to happen to you, madam." Before Grace could respond, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Moona grabbed the tray and rushed out of the room. Chief Matthew appeared in the doorway. What was Moona doing here? She brought me water. He looked at Grace for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Good. You should drink plenty of water. You need to stay healthy." He left. Grace sat frozen on the bed. What had she gotten herself into? 4 weeks had passed since the wedding. Grace had not left the house once. She had not seen her family. She had not spoken to anyone outside except for the brief phone calls with patients. Even those calls were monitored. Samuel would stand nearby listening, and afterward he would report everything to Chief Matthew. Grace felt like she was disappearing, little by little, day by day. Her spirit was breaking. She stopped eating properly. Moona would bring food, but Grace would only pick at it. She stopped sleeping well. At night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all her life would ever be. A beautiful prison, a golden cage. One morning, Grace looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were hollow, her cheeks were sunken, her skin had lost its glow. She looked like a shadow of herself. "What have I done?" she whispered to her reflection. 1 week later, Grace received the message that changed everything. It was early morning. Chief Matthew had already left for work. Grace was sitting in the bedroom when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Patience. "Sister, please come home now. Mama has collapsed. The doctors say she might not make it. Please." Grace's heart stopped. She jumped to her feet. She grabbed her small travel bag and threw a few clothes inside. She ran downstairs. Moona saw her and looked confused. "Madam, where are you going?" "I have to go home. My mother is dying." Moona's eyes widened. "But Ogre." "I don't care what Ogre said." Grace ran to the front door. She grabbed the handle. She pulled. The door did not open. She pulled again. Locked. "No, no, no, no." She pounded on the door. "Samuel, Samuel, open the gate, please." Samuel appeared on the other side of the glass. He looked at her with pity, but he did not move. "Please," Grace cried. "My mother is dying. I need to go to her." "I'm sorry, madam." Ogre gave strict instructions. "You are not allowed to leave without his permission." "This is an emergency. Please." Samuel shook his head and turned away. Grace's tears fell harder. She pounded on the door again. "Please, someone help me. Please." And then she heard his voice behind her. Calm, cold, deadly. "I married you, Grace." She froze. Her small travel bag slipped from her hand and hit the shiny marble floor. Tears were already rolling down her cheeks as she turned to face him. Chief Matthew stood at the top of the staircase, his arms crossed, his face hard. "I married you, so you belong here." Grace's fingers slipped off the handle. Fresh tears rushed down her face. She knocked on the door, shaking, then louder. "Please, someone help me, please. Samuel, Samuel, please, open the door." Samuel looked through the glass and turned away. Her chest tightened. She covered her mouth to hide her sob. What will happen to Grace now that the door has been closed against her? Will anyone be brave enough to help her? Or will money and silence destroy her life forever? Will her mother survive? Will Grace ever taste freedom again? Don't miss the next episode, because the next episode will shock you. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next powerful episode of this story. And if you believe someone needs to hear this story today, please share it with them. You never know whose life you might touch or whose burden you might help lighten. Remember, you are stronger than you know. Your story matters, and we're here to tell stories that reflect your reality, your struggles, and your victories. Subscribe now and join our family. We'll see you in the next video. Stay blessed, stay strong.